Hi, this is Daniel with End Time Country Living, and on this video I want to explain the importance of screening compost and getting it on the garden as soon as it's available, and also some of the techniques for doing that. Also how to build a screener or sieve or whatever all the other terms are for them, someplace to screen out all the large chunks and sticks and rocks and anything else that might get into your compost pile. So it's the beginning of November and it's time to start preparing the garden bed for next year. So the first thing that I do is to try to get a lot of the weeds out so that they're not growing and producing seed and propagating themselves over the year or over the winter, and also to get compost, whatever I have available. I try to, if I don't have stuff that I've made, I try to order some in and try to get it to start building up the soil, so in the spring the soil's ready to go. So I've already done quite a lot of screening this year in the fall, and here's one more pile of compost that I still need to screen out and get on my garden. And then that will pretty much be it. I have some other compost piles that are in process, but they probably won't be ready till spring because they have a lot of unbroken down grass clippings in them. So I'll just put on what I can and do the best I can. So I've done a lot of compost screening over the years for my garden, and trying to find a way to make it most efficient, to not spend a lot of time on all the different operations that it takes to bring the compost into the screener and all the getting it back out and things like that. So looking at other people's ideas and bringing in some of my own, I'll show you guys kind of what I've come up with that seems to be simple, not tiresome, easy to use, and sturdy and everything else. So the solution that most people come up with is to try to get the compost directly in to a wheelbarrow or some kind of cart, so that you don't have to then put it on the ground and then shovel it up, or figure out some other way to after it's screened to go transport it. So the fastest way is just to put it directly into something on wheels that you can go dump it. So this is a Jackson all steel wheelbarrow. This was given to me. I'm very thankful for it. It's fairly deep compared to a lot of the wheelbarrows you see like from True Temper, and it's a little more narrow at the top here. Works very well, and it's all steel all the way around in here. There isn't, the handles aren't wood at all. They aren't going to rot away. So the solution that I came up with as far as the screener, after several iterations of it, is something about this size that fits over the surface of the wheelbarrow here. This is upside down. You can kind of see the size of it here. This is the way it sits on top of the wheelbarrow. So the width is the same width as the top of the wheelbarrow, and the length here should be, I would say a foot less than the length of the wheelbarrow, because you want to have distance to move back and forth. This one's got kind of a drop down in the front. It's not completely level. This one is probably a little bit longer than it should be. This is probably about 8 inches from or 8 inches shorter than the wheelbarrow is long. And if you go all the way to the tip, it's probably a good foot. But even that, I'm not running it back up in this area. It's up in this area. So you just need to have the full range of motion here and not have it come back on the lower part, dropping compost on your feet and on your legs, basically is the idea there. You want to have about a foot range of motion there. So really need to custom make one for whatever wheelbarrow you're going to use. So I made mine. The first one I made was out of 2x4s. I realized that's an extreme amount of weight extra that I don't need. The lighter the better. So I made, this one is made out of 1x4s, and it seems to hold together quite nicely. So the hardware cloth of choice here is 1/2 inch. That seems to be a standard that most people find works really well for screening compost for the garden. It gives a nice fine compost, but yet it's not overly fine, and that means you get a lot more through without having to screen. If you do a 1/4 inch, which I have a 1/4 inch screen, you have to put a lot more effort into all the dumping it in there, shaking and dumping out. A good maybe 80% of it just gets dumped out because it won't go through. Where you have a 1/2 inch screen, you get a lot more material through, and so it saves you a lot more time. So as far as the construction of it here, so it's nothing too fancy on the corners here, just two wood screws in here, and just to make the box. And then I cut the screen to size, so that means it comes up to the edge and stops and gets cut off here. The pair of snips go along there, or wire cutters, just to snip each one there. Try to make it so that, so try to have a solid wire piece coming down just near the edge here on both sides. And someone else taught me something new just the other day, because I was struggling trying to get the screws to screw these down with, and they said, oh, just use washers. I'm like, okay, well, that's a great idea. I never thought about doing that. I should have. So put washers on there. Just get yourself some washers that go with the wood screws you're using here, and that will help to hold the screen in there nice and tight, and won't have the screws, because you can try to get it in a corner of these little squares, get the screw in there, but sometimes, and you can kind of pinch it in there, make it work sometimes, but sometimes it'll slip off after vibrations and things like that. It'll pop off. So you really would recommend putting some washers on there. And then the best way I found, you want to try to suspend, especially, it depends on your height. I'm about 6'4", so I need something fairly high. You could actually get a larger pipe that would raise it up a little bit higher. But this is basically the skid. This is what the screen's going to be riding on the edges of the wheelbarrow. So you want something fairly smooth. This is ABS pipe, about 1.5 inches to, well, 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches. I haven't actually measured it, but that's what it looks like. It's not critical, but somewhere in that range. And so I just have 4 screws along here to attach it on there nice and firmly, and it seems to be holding up. After a couple years of use, it seems to be holding up still nicely. And I've turned it once, so I flipped it over entirely 180 degrees and screwed it back on there after it started to wear, starting to wear through on the edges here. So then I could turn it 90 degrees and drill some more holes and get two more sides out of it, and then I'll probably have to replace it after that. Been thinking about if there's any way to do rollers or something like that, and I'm thinking it's just going to be problematic trying to keep it on the track, on the edges of the wheelbarrow. I don't know, and a lot of expense too. ABS, a little chunk of pipe, you can get a 10-foot chunk, and you can get years and years out of it just by taking a couple chunks out of it here. So I think this is probably the most economical solution. And then on the other side, so the same height, looked around to find a scrap of wood that's about the same height, or you can take a 1x4 and cut it down to match the same height as the pipe, so it sits level. It's not super critical that it's, if it was a 1/2 inch off, that would be fine between the two, but you kind of want it fairly level and elevate it. And also you want it to have it stick out. So this is about 2 inches of overhang on both sides there, and that provides about enough to hang over the edge so that you have a little bit of back and forth motion before it falls into the wheelbarrow. That seems to be enough. Too much is going to get in your way. So the other thing is it's nice to have some kind of guards for your hands, and even with gloves. It'll tear up your gloves after a while, the edges. So one other person actually folded the wire in on itself, made a hem, and then screwed it down, so that would be another option if you didn't have any kind of grips or didn't want to go look for them. This is just something I got at Home Depot, and it was actually something that we had used in the house or an apartment to cover up some cables in the edge. It was just like a little angle piece, and we had gotten a strip of it. It wasn't very expensive, but it was left over, so I said, well, what are we going to use, what can I put over this? And I remembered I had this stuff, so I just grabbed it and made some chunks, two sides for it. But something like that, just if you have access to a hardware store where you could get a little angle piece here. It's kind of like plastic with a little bit of foam inside or something like that. But whatever, even the clear plastic pieces or something like that would probably be work as well. You just have to try them out. So as far as gloves to use while screening, I've tried the leather gloves and I've tried the cotton ones with the rubber coating on them, and both of them wear out really quick in the fingers because you're constantly going back and forth over the screen to try to break it up and get as much in as possible. So the kind I found that seemed to hold up really well. These are some vinyl ones, Atlas, which I would recommend. I've had some of their cotton ones that are rubber coated, and they're very good. Atlas makes good gloves. So these are some vinyl ones. 660 large is the actual part number on them, but I've had 2 pair of these. I did get the other pair, I got a little bit of a tear just from use around only on one, between the fingers there on one little crack, and that's it. These have held up for a long time. They're very tough. The fingers they're a little bit smooth, but no signs of going through or cracking or wearing through. So something like a pair like this worked really well for doing screening material where you want something tough and strong. All right, so let's see this thing in action, and let's you can evaluate for yourself what you think about it. Get my gloves on here, and I like to use a good sized scoop shovel. We'll scoop some up, put it in here. Just a scoop shovel about that much is about all you need. 1 scoop. Get too much, you're sitting there shaking it through, and it isn't going to be very efficient. Now I have this wheelbarrow raised up just because I'm so tall. It's really hard in the back to be bending over trying to shake this thing. So if I can stand straight up, like back straight, that helps out a lot. Good shaking motion. And after a while, you just kind of start running your hand back and forth to kind of break up some of the chunks that are there. Got a bunch of leaves in here falling too. Fall time. And then it's just grabbing it on the sides and dumping it. Dumping it off to the side. I make a pile on one's on the far side of where I'm screening. So I bring it in from one side and then dump it on the other. I just throw my shovel down because trying to lean it up against anything is just problematic. When I'm doing the compost screening, it reminds me of how in our own lives we need to screen out all the bad things that may be coming in, that get mixed in with what's available for us to do or to think about, and to remove, just not let it come in, only keep the good stuff. And that's what we do with the screening of the compost. We exclude all the stuff that we don't want in our garden, or that hasn't been broken down enough. So just a thought to remember to protect yourself. Don't just let everything come in. We have gates. We have the nose gate. We have the eye gate, what we see. We have the ear gate, what we hear. And we need to be careful what comes into our minds, what we read and what we see, what we listen to make sure that we're not putting bad things in, because we are by beholding we are changed, says the Bible. So just a reminder of that. So that's how I deal with compost on our homestead. I hope you learned something and this was helpful for you. Leave me a comment or give me a thumbs up to let me know you like this video. So, all right, I'll see you on the next one. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.